Greetings, listeners. This is Thrice, a Sinister Siblings podcast where we watch a horror movie not once, not twice, but thrice to see if third time really is a charm. And if the movie is an onion with many layers worth unravelling, or merely a boiled potato. I'm Adam.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Mark. So, as illustrious as the onion analogy might be, the way this will actually work is our review will be based around 3 separate viewings of the movie. And what we do is our first part of the podcast here will be our individual views after we first watched it. Second time round will be how it goes with the input that we've each given each other. So an internal side of things. And then the third time round will be just also with external input. So either from you, the listener, or from reviews that we've found or conversations with people involved with the films. So tonight we've got a very special Easter Sunday recording that we're doing. And quite suitably, the film we're doing tonight is Immaculate. So Sydney Sweeney's crazy nun film.
Bit of Nunsploitation.
That's exactly it. It's a nice throwback. And so let's start off. We'll give you the official spiel of what the filmmakers came up with. Cecilia, a woman of devout faith, is warmly welcomed to the picture-perfect Italian countryside, where she is offered a new role at an illustrious convent. But it becomes clear to Cecilia that her new home harbours dark and horrifying secrets. The new role, of course, is a little bit more than a job description, I guess you would say. So, Trace, why don't you tell us, what did you think of on your first viewing of Immaculate?
I enjoyed Immaculate. I wasn't overly enamoured with the trailer. I thought it looked interesting though. I guess initially I thought it was maybe too glossy to be scary. It was a bit, a bit sexy, a bit American. And I sort of thought, it's a bit too polished perhaps. But I was pleasantly surprised with where the movie went and how it got there. So, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised for our first viewing.
So potentially you're on the onion side of things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm pro onion. I'm team onion.
What about you, Adam? Are you potato or are you onion?
I don't know if it's an onion, but it was definitely a tasty potato.
You can't put a third one in.
I liked it. I actually thought going in, I thought it was going to be a bit of a naughty nun movie, and somewhat disappointed that it wasn't, but also pleasantly surprised that it wasn't in the end, because it kind of gave it a bit more value in a way.
They did resist it. There was a bath scene, but they were still wearing clothes.
Yeah, there wasn't really any... You saw Sydney Sweeney and you're like, there's going to be boobs in that movie, but there was no boobs in that movie, which is...
There was definite hints of boob. They were trying to give you what you wanted, Adam. Like with the wet nun nighties and stuff like that, and she was braless for the entire thing.
Was she?
So, yes.
How did you...
Because
Girls just know.
No, of course you didn't. No, of course you didn't.
And this is why we watch films 3 times. So we can see if Sydney did wear a bra.
Exactly. The people need to know.
That is true. And being as I'm usually the person who likes to throw facts into things, one of the interesting things about this movie is it's been something that's actually been sitting around for about best part of 10 years, I believe. Sydney initially auditioned for this film when she was a teenager, and she's now in her mid-20s. But she really liked what the story was about. However, when you have a look into it all, the story initially wasn't about nuns.
Yeah.
So I'm not
really?
Yeah.
Because I was wondering that. I was thinking that today. I was like, this movie didn't need to be in a convent,
And I think the initial thing was still meant to be around, and this is a big spoiler, and it's of course important to tell you that if you haven't watched the movie yet, our podcast is full of spoilers because it's pretty hard to talk about a film without telling you what happens.
Especially
so if you haven't watched the movie yet, pause this, go watch the film, we'll wait. And now you're back, so that's great. So yes, obviously the virgin conception element of things. So the Immaculate from the title, of course, is that Sydney's character becomes pregnant without ever having intercourse.
The Immaculate Conception.
And my understanding is the original story still had that virginal element, but it was basically high schoolers. And I don't know how tongue-in-cheek the comment was that I read, but they were saying that potentially they didn't think people would really buy Sydney Sweeney as a high school virgin. Leading into your comments about her physical appearance, perhaps. So, but it's really cool that Sydney held on to it, and she actually chased the fella down. The author's name's Andrew Lobel. I hope I'm saying that right. And she always remembered it, and she wanted to do something with it. So now that she's got a bit more star power behind her, she actually she's formed a production company, and this is actually the first film she produced.
Yeah, she produced it, didn't she?
Yeah, she was involved with the production side of things, and so she actually hired the director, who's someone she'd worked with in the past as well. So
I wonder if is she a horror fan then, I wonder? Or she just thought this would be... it's definitely... It's to her credit that it was like... Again, back on this, I'm going to come back to the nudity thing, but it's to her credit that there was like not, a whole lot of nudity in it.
Well, she was in The Handmaid's Tale, wasn't she?
I don't know.
Pretty sure she was. And I mean, that's obviously got some darkish overtones to it as well. I quite liked it. I suppose I should put that on the table. I thought it was interesting. I'm actually glad it's one of the ones we're doing for the podcast, because I am interested to go back and have another look, because there's some sort of interesting clues and things they hint at, and I don't know whether I was slow and only picked it up at certain points. Which is one of the good things about the way we run the podcast, is that we do get a chance to have another look, because these conversations always lead me to realise there was things I just missed. And because you're watching the main part of the story, you're not necessarily checking secondary characters and looking for motives halfway through the film. So I really quite liked it. I thought it was very interesting. Has to be said, the last 10 minutes are just bonkers in a really good way. I mean, that end sequence, it gives you a couple of extra points on your rating, I think, for me straight away, because you go, that's going to be what people talk about. They may not remember the name of the movie, but people will say, what's that movie where Sydney Sweeney births a demon by herself by screaming at you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of felt like, almost like the whole movie was like, they had that kind of, that scene and worked backwards, in a way. Like, that was the tent pole that the rest of it was hanging on, that the rest of that movie was hanging on. That scene, her crazy birth, which was like a pretty rad performance, just that kind of close-up shot of her face, like just giving it everything, just acting the shit out of it. Yeah! And then plop, baby on the ground, picks up the rock, bang, bashes the shit out of it, It's intense.
So, leading up to that bit, now, in the film, of course, we've got the crazy priest / doctor guy who's behind this whole crazy process of trying to create the Immaculate. And obviously everyone who's listening has seen the film, and the scene in the catacombs there where they're battling away. Sydney was already super hyped up about everything. And actually the scene is still in the movie. She gets fake blood in her eye and it stings like buggery, apparently. And this is a quote that I got from an interview. So this is from the director. So the biggest challenge was on the last take. Sydney got blood, fake blood, in her eye, and it was stinging her, but we hadn't quite nailed the take. And she's actually in quite a lot of pain. But she's my boss, and she was like, just keep shooting, Mike. Keep shooting until we fucking get this. Sorry, spoiler alert, there's swearing in this sometimes. Because we didn't reset or anything, we just kept the camera rolling, and I think it was on the third take we finally got the perfect shot. But the pain in her voice was because she'd actually got fake blood in her eye. So, yeah, that last 10 minutes is just... She owns it. I think it's fantastic. And I'd almost recommend the film to anybody to give it a look off the back of that.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of films, I think, promise a lot and sometimes peter out, whereas I think this ended really, really strong. And it's actually something I wanted to talk to you guys about. Are you happy with how it ended?
Yeah. The ending made the rest of it kind of worthwhile. Like you said, memorable. Like, if it wasn't for that last 10 minutes, I don't know if I would have walked out of the cinema as happy as I was, Not that the rest of it wasn't decent, it was. It's just that they stuck the landing, I guess,
What about you, Trace? Do you reckon, like, for example, what if it had ended just before, or maybe just at the point she gave birth?
Yeah.
How would you have felt if that was the end point?
I think you would have felt robbed, because I think by that point you're wanting, well, not that you even get to see the baby, but you're wanting a resolution. You're wanting to either see that basically you want to see the baby. So you don't get to see the baby, but you do get to see her kill it. So that was enough payoff.
That was pretty effective as well, just to leave it to your imagination of what's going on with this baby. You don't get to see the baby, and it's actually a lot more scary. It's that Rosemary's Baby thing.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, I think Adam was saying to me that, is it a demon baby, or is it just like a genetically engineered
mutant?
Just a science baby. I like that about it too. You sort of think, it's there in a convent, it's nuns, and you just instinctively you sort of think the movie's going to be about evil, it's going to be about Satan, and I think there's a lot of talk online that it's like a satanic movie, and it's like, it's actually not. It's not an evil baby. There's not devil worship in it or anything like that. It's all just like weird science.
But it's also, it does have elements of cult sort of vibes to it. It reminded me incredibly of Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Where she was just like closeted away, she's pregnant. Yes. They all know why she's pregnant, but they're not telling her. She's separated, she's isolated.
Yeah.
And they were all like meeting, and remember they had those, I don't know if it was actual or just like...
But it was like the other side of that coin though, like they weren't having a devil baby, they were trying to have the second coming of Christ.
Well, but it's all a bit mixed up there. I think the very fact that they're meant to be people of God who were interfering. And I also thought it was kind of weird in the fact that you're using science to prove faith. Which I thought was kind of a weird...
That was cool, actually.
A weird thing for people to do. I'm going to use science to prove my faith. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, from the DNA of one of the nails from the crucifixion, which is a cool idea.
Yeah,
very history. Yeah.
But also, why? Why were they trying to recreate Christ?
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, if you had the second coming and you could control the second coming, you go, well, that's where your evil factor probably plays into it. I mean, think about the control you could have over the world if that's what you did.
Yeah, I know. But it's also like, if he's really, like, I mean, we're not going to go, theosophical. But if he's really the Son of God, he's probably not going to let some, local dude take control of him. And then I also thought, talking of things that have made me curious, can it be an immaculate conception if somebody's given you a going over with a turkey baster?
Is that what you think's happened?
Well,
why would they turkey baste?
Because it's a scientific baby.
Well, how did she get pregnant?
Well, I'm assuming there's a bit. She had a couple of wines, and then they gave her the relic, and she fainted.
Yeah, and then they gave her the.
Wait, they gave her the relic.
Yeah, remember she went to and she held it.
Held the nail.
I'm calling it the relic.
Yeah.
Too much Da Vinci Code.
But no, but I mean, it was a scientifically engineered baby. He's been trying for 20 years.
So I'm assuming, she passes out, then that's what, okay.
Well, I guess so, yeah, because he...
Because we're talking scientifically engineered.
He must have artificially inseminated or something. So he knew all along that it wasn't. So he was just playing along. He knew that it wasn't.
So I think, that's where I think there's the scientific element. You've got the mad scientist, but you've also got this cult, this religious cult, who are sort of going, this is an immaculate conception. We're going to keep her safe. She's not allowed in the outside world. This is, the second coming of Christ. So it does have those real, and it has folk horror elements in there as well, of when you look at the countryside that it's filmed in. And you have her almost like when her pregnancy is announced, they dress her up as Mary Magdalene. I mean, that's even reminiscent of Midsummer, where they dress her up.
She almost had that same vacant look like Florence Pugh of what is happening.
That was a stylistic kind of influence here there.
Yeah.
But, and this is, I guess, where I'm going to benefit from another viewing, I'm thinking the rest of the convent wasn't in on it. They did believe it was an immaculate conception. It was only the mad scientist priest and maybe his henchman that... No,
well, there was... she had that enemy, Isabella.
Yes.
Who was like, it should have been me. Yes. The one who tried to drown her in the bath. So she must have known, because she's like, we have to try again.
Yes.
So she knew. And the other big clue You recall where Cecilia
Yes.
gets branded on the feet with the cross?
Yeah, that's right.
And one of the
That's
other
what she
old
was like, an
nuns.
Yes, they've been trying for years.
Well, that got me to thinking then, because they have this idea that that convent is for old, dementia nuns to pass away.
Exactly.
Are they all failed experiments?
Well, and that was also the thing, because when her friend is having her tongue removed in the middle of the night and she's outside looking in, and that elderly lady comes up to her who has, at one point in a scary scene, cut the hair from Cecilia's head and she's made a doll. She's made a puppet. Again, those references to folk horror. And she kind of almost says in a sort of demonic-y kind of voice, gives her a bit of a warning. And so you sort of think, there are other elements at work. There are other belief systems at work in this film.
And it's interesting, because I know you said you got a Rosemary's Baby vibe out of it. I got quite a Suspiria vibe out of it
Yeah,
too.
that too, absolutely.
Because Cecilia turns up, she doesn't speak the language, she's sort of a fish out of water, everything's already happening and she's just thrown into it. But the same thing, she makes that best friend, just like Jessica Harper's character did in Suspiria.
Yeah.
The best friend finds herself in all sorts of trouble because she said too much.
Yeah.
So I thought there was that element to it.
Oh,
But
very much so. Very much so.
But when you talk about the religious zealousness, I've got to say, I thought that was a weak point of the film. I thought the fact that there's a whole lot of people going, why are we doing this? 'Cause religion. Just felt a bit like we're of the belief that... So all we're told about Cecilia is basically she was at a small church or something and that was kind of not working. So some random priest contacted her from the other side of the planet and she's like, yeah, I don't speak Italian or anything, but I'll just go there.
Because they'd been following her. They'd been tracking her whole life since she had that near-death experience with the ice.
I understand why they wanted her, but why did she go?
Yeah, I also found that curious as to why you would do that. But then I also found it curious. People, I mean, I don't have the stats, but I'm sure people fall through the ice all the time. And then survive, like a lot of people don't. But I'm sure there are a great percentage of people who do get a dunking, come back up. And so I was really curious as to really? And that made the news over in Italy and you've been following her ever since? Okay.
Yeah, so I did feel, and look, and the big thing we need to talk about when it comes to this film is the pro-choice abortion conversation, which is the big thing that's running through this whole film is about how Cecilia's character is being controlled, has no say over her own body, and ultimately at the end has the victory and becomes the one who is in charge of her pregnancy and who has the say.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because they keep running this theme through the film of the meek shall inherit the earth. It's something they quote quite regularly. And I felt they should have done a bit more to show Cecilia being so meek because that's what they wanted.
Yes.
But all you really got was a couple of little splashes. There was... She couldn't kill the chicken.
Yeah.
She just couldn't bring herself to do that.
Yeah.
And then later she does when you see her sort of gaining power. She...
Yeah.
Even where her new best friend walks in on her while she's in the bathroom and she's almost apologetic that she's in the bathroom. When most people would be like, what are you doing? Get out of the bathroom. So she was sort of played this meekness. I suppose even when we had that scene that I don't know why it was really even in there where the border guards were going through her stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was just exposition to go, look, here's a Italian phrase book and stuff. She doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah.
Even then she was like, could we please hurry? I need to go. Some more meekness might have been good, maybe to learn her backstory a bit more, I guess. I felt that was probably lacking a little.
Yeah, I think I found her a little bit, not so much meek as, I guess a bit, gormless. The fact that, it starts with the fact she's gone to the other side of the world just on a rando's invitation. But then also... all this stuff's happening. I'm assuming, be quite terrifying to suddenly find yourself pregnant in this spooky old convent. And you got this nasty nun as well who's got her, got it in for you. She just doesn't seem frightened enough. She's sort of quite happy to go wandering around in the middle of the night in the world's most creakiest doors in the world in this place. So creaking her way through the convent in the dark hours. I just sort of thought, you'd probably be a little bit more suspicious. And at one point as well, she finds a little cryptic clue behind a painting in her room. It was a biblical quote.
It's funny you should ask.
Yes, what was that, Mark?
So it's actually Corinthians 2, verses 11 to 14.
Oh,
And really, if it's one of those interesting little Easter eggs, no pun intended, that they put into it, because if you can catch it, it tells you a lot of... This is what the verse is. For such people are false apostles, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising, then, if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness.
Yeah.
Their end will be what their actions deserve.
Yeah.
Well, it said all that behind the painting.
Well, that was
the link to the
with Corinthians,
article.
that verse. She actually looked it up in her Bible. She looked up just the verse 14, which was, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. But that verse here talking about, I thought it was quite interesting, their end will be what their actions deserve.
Yeah.
Because obviously, when she goes to town and goes all superwoman at the end and starts killing people left and right, that's
they
really
get what they deserve.
get. Yeah.
As apostles, yes. Well, that was also, I guess, one of the things in one of the, right at the end where she's down in the, when she's in the lab, I don't know if that was in the catacombs or not, or if she went there afterwards, but the father, who wasn't that nice a chap, he gets basically set on fire. She throws some ethanol around the room and he gets burnt up. And you think, okay, that's it, we're all done now. He's gone up in flames. But no, he just
come back for one last scare.
Yeah, he just casually grabs the fire extinguisher and he's okay.
Yeah.
So from there on in, I referred to him as the crispy fried Christian. Yeah. And I just sort of thought, I definitely got what he deserved in the very end. But yeah, I thought that was a little bit...
How did he actually die in the end? Oh, she stabbed him.
She stabbed him with the nail.
Yeah.
Yes.
She took it with her.
Yes,
She nailed him.
Oh.
Yes, nice.
So, looking back at things a little bit, I was keen to find out whether Sydney herself, given that she sort of drove a lot of this project, where she sat, I suppose, with the abortion side of things. What? And it's interesting. So, the film started actual shooting, around December of 2022, and then finished mid-Feb 2023. And prior to that, literally the month beforehand, she gave an interview in GQ UK. And a section of it I thought was really interesting. So I'll just read this for you. So this is an interview she did with Olivia Ovenden. Women's bodies and the theme of bodily autonomy crop up in Sweeney's work repeatedly, most glaringly in the ending of Euphoria's first season, when Cassie faces an abortion alone. When I was doing The Handmaid's Tale, I had a lot of women come up to me and tell me how much the show meant to them, she says of her role in the TV adaptation of Margaret Atwood's once dystopian novel. With the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the series feels darker and more urgent than ever. People were like, oh no, that'll never happen. I honestly don't know how we're in the place that we're in. So she's on record then as obviously right before this film started of sort of putting her position there as someone who played a character who had an abortion previously and talking about, the Roe versus Wade situation. Seems, without putting words into her mouth, that Sydney's on the side of pro-choice. So it's not all that surprising, I guess, that, she's behind the way this film's been put together.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I mean, she had the baby.
But she didn't want to.
Yeah. I guess I didn't get any of that when I watched the film at all. I was purely watching it from how did she get pregnant? Is it a demonic baby? And then obviously as you move forward, you find out it's scientifically engineered.
But she's pregnant against her will.
Yeah, but that kind of was just it's a horror movie. It's not a... Yeah, so I kind of just took that as, okay, that's just what's happened. But is it demonic? Or have we got, that... What's that movie, It's Alive? Where you've got the pram and that little, So I was just more thinking in terms of horror tropes, really. Demon or mutant? What have we got going on? That was literally, sort of this hadn't even...
That's another layer that sort of comes into it because of the whole, I don't know, Sydney Sweeney argument. And I guess you can... Yeah, as I said, that's a layer of the onion that you can look at if you wish, I guess.
Yeah, it just wasn't a layer
subtext to things.
I was even taking into account. I think stepping away from that, I'd be interested to ask you guys what you thought of in the visual device where they had those the nuns. There was often seen nuns in the film who had like red stockings over their faces.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of those? Were they like real, or were they just like sort of ghostly type entities she was seeing?
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
I liked them. I thought they were effective.
But they didn't actually expand on that, or...
No, but they were there a few times. They were there before the girl's suicide, which I thought was a great scene, where she falls from the...
Yeah.
Was it suicide?
Well, that's the thing.
Pushed, yeah.
That's the thing, but I thought it was terrific how she fell out of the building. Whether she jumped or not.
I feel like she was pushed for trying to attack...
Cecilia, yeah, because there's a throwaway line in there, but I think it's the father doctor guy who says something like, "We'll take care of that so she won't trouble you again," or something like that. And you feel like potentially with her being very vocal about it should be me and stuff, maybe they're like, okay, we've got a rogue cannon here, we need to do something.
Yeah.
That also reminded me of Midsummer, and I'm sure Ari Aster probably ripped it off from somewhere else as well, but that device of like the person falling, you don't really see them. They fall off camera, and then all of a sudden it cuts to huge gory close up of like the mess of a person.
Yeah, no, I think there were obviously, like we've already spoken about, definite references to other films and other styles.
Yeah,
I think like we've talked about Suspiria, there were definite. Argento.
Yeah, it was all the giallo stuff and all the catacombs and stuff. It was kind of like Mario Bava. So it had that kind of Italian vibe.
I believe there was actually a couple of sound cues used from old giallos.
Yeah,
I think some of the soundtrack actually is authentic.
Yeah,
and even the locations too.
Soundtrack,
Yeah, the audio was great. I'm not going to try and announce these or pronounce even some of these Italian ones, but the locations were quite interesting, and they are real places in Italy, and I think there's been a lot of films filmed there over the years. So I think that added to it, which was really good.
Absolutely. It reminded me of in The Omen, where Mr. Thorne is going to try and find where Damien's mother was born. And he goes to the old, Franciscan Abbey, and, they're in that Italian countryside, and they go to that old monastery, and it really reminded me of that. Even the fact that they had those sort of grey, ominous skies and that beautiful sort of lush, sort of just remote and wild kind of countryside with these ruins that are also beautiful in their own way, as beautiful as they are terrifying. I just sort of thought it really had those flavours running through it, and the music as well. It really kind of evoked a time gone by.
So if I tell you that the film was initially planned to be filmed in Ireland, how do you think that might have impacted things? Because obviously Ireland's got a long history of Catholicism as well. Obviously the roots probably are more suited to Italy, and that's why the director suggested the move.
Yeah.
But how would you have felt if it had been done in Ireland?
It still could have worked, absolutely, because Ireland's just as beautiful with just as many sort of remote sort of castles and beautiful locations. I reckon it would have worked.
Yeah. I feel like the Roman Catholicism has a much more kind of Baroque kind of creepy brand than Irish Catholicism.
Oh, yes. Well, that's it.
Plus, you wouldn't have the language barrier.
Well, I was just thinking that as well.
Yeah.
You
And maybe she just wanted a holiday in the Italian, regional Italy. Can't fault her for that.
Now, I'm not in any way, shape or form a particular expert when it comes to, setting up shots and things. But I couldn't help but notice we get lots of profile shots, especially of Sydney. And I don't know, did you guys pick up on that? We seem to see her from the side a lot, and I wasn't sure. It was obviously a very deliberate choice, and it was in it a lot. And I'd ask you guys to check it out next time because it's a very deliberate choice, and I'm not sure what it's trying to say, apart from the fact she's a beautiful woman, so I guess. But, you'd think there's a choice for that. I'm going to have to probably do a bit more digging. I've got to figure what that's all about because it's odd.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is really interesting. I think next time that I watch it, I want to look more for the folk horror elements. Like, why did that old lady make a puppet from her hair? I'm like, why did that occur? What was that intended? Was that a protection, or was that she was trying to curse her? Or
Well, it's at odds with being overly Catholic as well.
Exactly. It's not something you expect from a nun. So I'm kind of interested to look at that. And also there was a theme that ran throughout about the suffering. You know, you see it even, I think it was in the trailer that I was watching again the other night. You know, suffering is suffering, and just suffering. The word suffering comes up a lot as well. So, and the suffering obviously that she goes through. I think it's, I'd like to sort of look more, and just I guess to see more clues as well. There's bound to be, like absolutely bound to be lots more clues.
Well, there's two clues I'm thinking of. So the first one is one of the very first interactions Sister Cecilia has is with a sort of ranting kind of nun, and the girl says, "Oh, careful with this one, she bites," and stuff like that. So I sort of dismissed that as just, oh, it's a crazy old lady, but knowing that she's probably one of the failed experiments, you go, I want to sort of pay more attention to what is she talking about? What is that element? But the other thing too is trying to get a bit more, they sort of put it there in front of you but then just took it away. Cecilia realised they had a file on her and went and found that file, but we only ever so briefly saw there was basically some sort of genetic breakdown, which we're assuming is her DNA, and then that article about her falling through the ice or whatever. But it was they just kind of flashed it in front of you. So I'm keen to try and see if I can find out a little bit more about what's in that, or whether it is just
Yeah, it would have been good
that.
if there'd been like a huge stack of these folders. It seemed like there was maybe a couple in there. It didn't seem like it had been going on for donkey's years. But also, I don't know, it'd just be interesting to see if like Reverend Mother and the more senior priest, I'm not sure what his title is, if they knew, because when you think about it, if this has been going on for donkey's years, if most of the people there, or most of the nuns there are failed experiments, surely they've got an inkling that it's not God, that it's the Father who's downstairs in his lab. But they didn't appear to, though.
Or were they just doing it for her benefit? Or did
I don't know.
That it was
I don't know if they genuine, because I feel like there was different motivations happening and different beliefs happening in the one convent.
Yeah.
So I think some people were obviously not witchcraft, but obviously using almost pagan practices. Yeah. Other people are full-on Catholics thinking this is the Immaculate Conception, and he's over there being a scientist, and you know, so doing the devil's work, so to speak. Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. So I think it's had lots of, I'm still keen to see it a second time, because I think there's probably more to see. And it was just really, I think there were a lot of shots that I just really, and scenes I really appreciated. Like I loved when she tried to do a runner and she was running through the field and they're chasing her down, and like she's in her flowing, gown and everything. I mean, that could be from like a Hammer horror or
That's
something
what I mean.
like
That's
that.
what I liked about it. There was almost like sort of impressionistic kind of elements to it, I guess, where it just cut to that. It didn't bother with like her running, screaming out of the car. It was just, okay, bang, she's out, she's on the field. It was good.
So I like that. Yeah. So that's what I'll be looking for in a second viewing. So I guess, as a first viewing, what are your thoughts? What are your reviews? What would you give it?
How many nun habits? No, or how many...
Bloody nuns?
How many rock-crushed babies?
Oh. No, I think how many habits.
How many habits? Okay. I will give this movie...
Out of 10?
Yeah, out of 10.
I will give it a good 7.5 habits. Yes.
And what are you most looking forward to in the rewatch?
I think I'd like to pay more attention to the music, which is an odd thing to say, but I remember it's just standing out to me. It's like, this actually got a really good soundtrack, and I don't know. But, But as to what you were saying, I'm not so sure if there was like different motives or just more kind of plot holes. I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at that element of it. Who was in on the whole science baby thing, and who was oblivious and genuinely thought that it was an immaculate conception. Yeah.
And you, Mark?
I'm just thinking about what Adam was saying there. It's an interesting point, because there's almost another theme, another layer of that onion around exploiting people who have belief. And, it's how evil is this doctor father who's going, you know what, I'm in this really holy place and I'm taking advantage of that situation. So that's pretty crazy. The sound design was really good because not just the music part, but when they chose not to use anything, I thought was really good. Because suddenly you have these moments where it's dead quiet there. And that's why it's great seeing it in the cinema as well. You know, but it's dead quiet and you don't want to even sort of take a breath or cough or move your chip packet because you're like, you know, you're sort of on the edge of your seat. What I'm looking forward to when I rewatch it is trying to find more clues. So a little bit like Adam was saying as well, I want to see just, did they leave some breadcrumbs for us along the way to sort of lead us to where we're going? Because ultimately it's not even really a supernatural film.
No. I like that about it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, but then it wasn't, and it was refreshing.
Yeah, the evil was very human.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm just looking for, obviously, just a good film. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes second time round, enjoying Sydney's performance again. So look, I would probably give it. I'm going to go with 8 habits. I'm going to go with 8 habits.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty strong recommendation. You know, I would, anyone who likes horror, I'd be saying, you know what, check this out.
Yeah. No. I'm the same. I think I'm giving it 8 habits. I really enjoyed it. I just found like you both, the end really just like sealed the deal for me. But there were a few points through it where I really was like, oh, I love this part. And I love the atmosphere and I love the sound design and all of those kind of things. So I was really impressed by Sydney and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, definitely I'm looking forward to seeing it again. And yeah, it's good to be in a position where you're looking forward to seeing it again.
So from here now, viewers, or listeners I should say, what will happen is it's going to be a very short break for you, but it's probably going to be a little period of time for us as we wait for Immaculate to come onto streaming or out onto Blu-ray. So in a couple of minutes you're going to hear from us with after we've watched it for the second time. But until then, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.